And thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. Really happy to have you here. So, Michigan State University is in beautiful East Lansing, Michigan. It's a really big school, more than 40,000 undergrads enrolled at any one time, another 7,000 or so people enrolled as graduate students. And Michigan State is a really big name school. It gets a lot of national attention, in particular for its sports teams. The most high profile college sports are obviously football and basketball. Michigan State almost always has really great teams in both football and basketball. They've also got a pretty good hockey program. Because Michigan State is a Division I school and because they are very, very good at the sports that get on TV, and most especially because they're part of the Big Ten, which is a big, highly televised, lots of attention athletic conference in this country. Whether or not you got any connection to Michigan, people all over this country know Michigan State and the Michigan State Spartans. Well, last night, the Faculty Senate at Michigan State voted that their school should join the other schools in the Big Ten in a totally non-sports related agreement. The faculty at Michigan State voted last night that their school should join with all the other schools in the Big Ten in what they're calling a mutual defense compact, a mutual academic defense compact. And what that means is kind of what it says. When Trump inevitably comes after one of the schools in the Big Ten, be it Michigan State or Rutgers or Ohio State or UCLA or USC or University of Washington or any of the other schools in that conference, the idea is that all the other schools would agree to help that school defend itself and fight back, which would mean lawyers and experts and advocacy and lobbying and public relations. They would all do it together. They would treat Trump attacking any one of those schools as an attack on all of those schools. So no matter which one Trump picks first to go after, no school would have to fight alone. Michigan State's faculty voted last night for their school to join and help create such a compact. And they are not the first, they are just the latest. They join Rutgers in New Jersey and the University of Nebraska at Lincoln and Indiana University at Bloomington. Also outside the Big Ten, the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. All those schools have taken the same or similar steps thus far. According to the Chronicle of Higher Education and our own reporting, we are expecting votes along these lines soon at the Ohio State University and the University of Michigan and the University of Washington. We believe a vote like that is under discussion already at the University of Minnesota and at Penn State. We've also had faculty at Northwestern and the University of Oregon already pass similar but sort of more mild statements saying that they are generally in favor of this kind of idea. But you know, a statement is just a statement. All that and $1 will buy you a scratch ticket. And frankly, time is short. But I'm telling you, this is a movement that is nevertheless picking up steam. Today we've got grad student unions at a whole bunch of universities asking for their schools to join in a mutual academic defense compact like this as well. Grad students at the University of Minnesota, which I just mentioned, again, may have a faculty vote on this matter soon. Also grad students at Cornell University and Stanford, University of Chicago, Northwestern, University of New Mexico, New Mexico State, North Carolina State, Johns Hopkins, MIT, Dartmouth, University of Iowa. Grad students in all of those places speaking out, asking their universities to form a mutual defense compact with other schools. Tomorrow, this is one to watch for in Wisconsin. In Madison, we're expecting a big rally at the University of Wisconsin at Madison to demand that that school join such a compact as well. So this is something that is really picking up steam, but it ought to. Vice President J.D. Vance gave a keynote speech to a national conservatism conference a couple of years ago, and the title of his speech was literally, "The Universities Are the Enemy."
Ladies and gentlemen, the universities do not pursue knowledge and truth. They pursue deceit and lies, and it's time to be honest about that fact.
The title of the speech was literally, "The Universities Are the Enemy." He ended the speech with a quote from Richard Nixon, "Professors are the enemy." And he didn't mean it ironically. They're really not kidding about this stuff. Part of their mission is to use their power in the U.S. government to destroy American higher education, to destroy U.S. colleges and universities, not because of any particular thing that colleges and universities are doing, but just because they think they're bad and they shouldn't exist, and they are going to try to destroy them. They have been saying this for years. Now it is clear we should believe them. Tonight, CNN and the Washington Post are reporting that President Trump has directed the IRS to strip tax-exempt status from Harvard University after Harvard said this week that it would not accede to Trump's threats. It would not enter into some kind of receivership where Donald Trump gets to dictate the school's internal policies and academic decisions. Now, there are, of course, laws about tax-exempt status. The IRS can't legally take it away from a university or from any entity just because Trump pounds his chest and says so. So we'll be talking about that more on tonight's show. But the fact that Trump is trying it tells anybody paying attention that, yeah, now's the time, move fast, right? Any school that wants to survive what Trump and Vance are doing here, what their agenda is here for American universities and colleges, any school that wants to survive what's coming their way better find a way to not have to fight alone. And so, yes, now we are seeing all kinds of colleges all across the country move toward mutual defense pacts with other schools. Basically, little NATO treaties for all the colleges. An attack on one is an attack on all. I'll tell you, I have no connection to any of these efforts, but I would just say, as an observer, just speaking strategically, my only note on this might be, go faster. Once he's targeted you, it's too late to have a mutual defense treaty in position. You have to have these things in place ahead of time before he signs that executive order or yanks your funding or does whatever he's going to do to you. Time is short. River rises. So we're going to stay on this. We're going to keep you posted. While we are on this subject, though, may I also introduce you to the Federal Workers Legal Defense Network. This is brand new. More than 1,000 lawyers in 42 states have completed training now to defend federal workers from all aspects of what Trump is doing to them in the federal government. Not just in lawsuits to challenge Trump's mass, indiscriminate, and in some cases illegal firings of huge swaths of people who work for the U.S. government, but also training on how to provide individual guidance and legal support to individual federal workers who have been fired or otherwise mistreated by the Trump administration. This was convened by civil rights groups, including the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, and advocacy groups like Democracy Forward. You keep hearing their name in the news because they've been suing the bejesus out of Trump in this second term. It was also pulled together by unions, including especially the AFL-CIO. They have all now come together to put together this very large 1,000-plus lawyer effort in 42 states, this Federal Workers Legal Defense Network. And they say their lawyers are trained and it is now up and running. And again, I would just say, speed matters. In an attempted authoritarian takeover that is trying to go as far as it can, as fast as it can, before the country can properly organize its defenses, speed matters. That said, even if it hasn't been done already, still do it, right? Even if the best time to have done something like this Federal Workers Legal Defense Network was probably yesterday or a month ago, the second best time to do it is right now. And so, yes, as of today, we've got one. And that means that federal workers are better off today than they were before. In terms of the country standing up its defenses against the authoritarian takeover, the Washington Post tonight was first to report on Trump's plans for what he's going to do to healthcare. And these plans are draconian enough that I can't help but think that they may have an impact on how many Americans think they've got some skin in the game in terms of whether or not they want to participate in a protest or otherwise take part in some sort of civic activity to say no, to show their dissent, to register their disapproval of what Trump is doing. Because what the Washington Post is reporting on Trump's plans for healthcare, this is Trump's plans for healthcare after the 10,000 people that he just fired from HHS. On top of those 10,000 people fired from HHS, Trump's new plan is reportedly to cut another $40 billion from U.S. healthcare and health research. That's fully a third of what the United States spends on healthcare and research. Trump wants to cut all of the CDC's work, for example, on heart disease and obesity and diabetes and smoking and HIV. You think that might galvanize people in this country? Trump is not saying he wants to trim these programs or make them more efficient. The plan, according to this document published by the Washington Post, the plan is to eliminate the CDC's work on heart disease, obesity, diabetes, smoking, HIV. Yeah, because it's not like any of us know anybody who has any one of those issues, right? No one within the sound of my voice right now has any connection to anyone with heart disease, right? Have you ever even heard of that? Heart disease? Does that sound like a foreign concept? I mean, Americans will sure be glad that Donald Trump forced the United States of America to stop working on heart disease altogether because, yeah, none of us have ever heard of anybody having a heart attack, right? None of us have anybody in our families or anybody we're connected to who's got problems with cholesterol or high blood pressure, right? That's really exotic stuff, right? Yeah, obesity. Americans have no idea what that is. We've got no personal connection to that. Thank God Donald Trump is going to save us from the waste of the U.S. government working on those woke liberal problems, like diabetes. This was Missoula, Montana today. In deep red state Montana, Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders turning out more than 9,000 people today. Look at this. Look at that crowd. Middle of the day on a Wednesday in Montana. Yesterday in California, AOC and Bernie turned out over 10,000 people in Bakersfield, California, and 26,000 people in Folsom, California. This is not like San Francisco or Oakland or Berkeley. This is not a liberal enclave in California. And they turned out 26,000 people in Folsom.
You know, I heard that someone started flying a plane with a banner that said, this is Trump country. It sure don't look like it today. I don't think this is Trump country. I think this is our country.
That was Folsom, California, in a Republican congressional district yesterday. This was the day before that, Monday, in Ruby Red, Idaho, a sold-out capacity crowd of 12,500 people. Look at this. In Nampa, Idaho. This was the day before that in Ruby Red, Utah. 20,000 people turning out to see Bernie and AOC in Salt Lake City. This was the day before that in Los Angeles. Senator Bernie Sanders, his office saying that this crowd that turned out in, drop the chyron there so people can see the crowd. Thank you. Senator Bernie Sanders' office saying this crowd of 36,000 people that turned out to see him and AOC in Los Angeles on Saturday was the biggest crowd that Senator Bernie Sanders has ever spoken to anywhere. These are just massive, massive, massive events that the two of them have been holding in California, but not in the, not necessarily in the blue state caricature parts of California. And also in Utah and Idaho and Montana. And these crowds are out there for two of the most dynamic and most unapologetic fighting progressives in all of U.S. electoral politics. The Fight Oligarchy Tour. Senator Sanders' office says of the people who've been RSVPing for these events, yes, most of them are Democrats, but they say 21% of people turning out for these events are independents, and they say 8% of people turning out for these rallies are Republicans. And 8%, I know, 8% sounds like single digits, but 8% when you're talking about like 200,000 people they've spoken to at these events thus far, that's saying something. And huge events like these that are being done by Senator Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, huge events like these are definitely saying something about how the country feels about this political moment and about Donald Trump. And I will say, just in terms of the media, the sheer size of these events and the fact that most of them are in red states means that they're starting to get a ton of press and a ton of attention from the mainstream media. And that, of course, is starting to rattle everyone in politics on all sides, which is always fun to see. But I'll tell you, seeing those big events and seeing all the press they're now getting is fantastic to watch. But look around, because when it's not an event with thousands of people, which obviously is going to get a lot of attention, what we're still seeing is thousands of events, thousands of protests that are happening every day and in every state. I mean, here's just a snapshot. Yesterday, protests to save Social Security from what Trump is doing to it at the Social Security field office here in Peekskill, New York, and at the Social Security office in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and in East Vancouver, Washington, people, again, protesting to protect Social Security. In Baltimore, Maryland, people protesting against Trump letting his top campaign donor, Elon Musk, access everyone's personal data at the Social Security Administration. This was outside the Social Security headquarters in Washington, D.C. yesterday. You see the sign there. Elon has your SSN. Elon has your Social Security number. Protests in Atlanta against Trump's mass firings at the CDC. These protesters in Atlanta joined by Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Democratic Congressman Hank Johnson. In Kansas City, Missouri, people turning out protesting against Trump's mass firings at the IRS. In San Francisco, protests against Trump turning the IRS into a weapon to be used against immigrants. At Florida International University in Miami, protests against Trump's attacks on immigrants and on international students. No ICE on campus. At the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, a protest against students' visas being revoked. More protests against Trump's attacks on immigrants and international students at Emory University in Georgia. In Burlington, Vermont, a protest outside the detention hearing for Rumeysa Ozturk. She's the Tufts University doctoral student, the Fulbright scholar, who was snatched off the street and taken to a prison in Louisiana by masked Trump agents who didn't show their names and didn't show their faces. Put her in an unmarked car. Yesterday, also in Louisiana, a protest outside that immigration prison, which is holding Rumeysa Ozturk, and also holding Mahmoud Khalil from Columbia University, and frankly, thousands of other people whose names we do not know. People protested at the Tesla dealership in Chicago yesterday, including these kind of cute signs that are shaped like Cybertrucks. I've never thought Cybertrucks were cute, but the signs shaped like Cybertrucks are cute. People protested at an announcement by the Indiana governor, Mike Braun, when he announced yesterday that he's going to try to do to healthcare in Indiana what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is doing to national healthcare for Trump. Oh, boy. Indiana residents turned out at the state capitol to tell Governor Mike Braun what to do with that idea. Signs saying things like, Governor Braun, why ask a lawyer for medical advice? And hands off our vaccines. And simply, clown show. The resounding no that you are hearing, or the resounding clown show raspberries, or the resounding ovation for the this doesn't look like Trump country, this looks like our country comment from Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, what I just showed you is just a snapshot of a day. But that kind of resistance, that kind of saying no, that kind of rejection of what Trump is doing and are willing to protest it and say no to it. It's taking every different form, right? I mean, the Pro Bono Legal Defense Network for federal workers, more than 1,000 lawyers joining that to work pro bono for federal workers. The mutual academic defense agreements for colleges. The big rallies, the small handful of brave protesters making sure dissent is visible at local congressmen's offices, local Social Security offices, local IRS offices. We also saw it yesterday in something I've never really seen before, a very unusual show of support for judges and for the judiciary. A small group, including a sitting judge and a retired judge, and a number of legal academics, legal professionals, asked people to convene online yesterday to show support for judges and their families and stand up in a nonpartisan way against threats to judges and their families. Among the judges who participated in this was Judge Esther Salas, whose husband was grievously wounded and whose son was murdered in New Jersey. I first heard about this. I thought, one, this is a very unusual thing. You don't hear about the judiciary asking people to stand up for them very often. And two, because the threats that judges and their families have received right now are so terrible, I thought, even though this is a very unusual thing that they're asking people to do, I thought, you know what, I bet they are going to get a pretty good response to this. I bet they're going to get, like 200 or 300 people to show up online in this Speak Up for Justice event. I thought they'd get, I thought they'd get a couple hundred people. I thought they might get like 500 people. They got more than 7,000 people joining that event in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. So the ways people are standing up and saying no, and standing up and saying they reject this, and standing up and giving the administration the one finger salute, put it in blunt terms, they are innumerable and unpredictable. And they surprise me every day that we cover this stuff. But today we saw something from a U.S. Senator that we never thought any U.S. Senator would ever have to do. And so add this to the pantheon of things that people are doing to stand up to this administration to try to stop some of the worst that they are trying to do. As one federal judge started contempt proceedings against the Trump administration, and a second judge threatened them over the Trump administration refusing to comply with court orders, insisting that there's no law that can constrain Donald Trump from sending people from this country to a foreign prison indefinitely with no legal process at all. Today, a U.S. Senator, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democratic senator from Maryland, he himself flew alone to El Salvador to try to get back one of his constituents, to try to get back a Maryland resident who Donald Trump sent to that foreign prison in El Salvador, even when the Trump administration admitted that trying to deport him in the way they did had been an administrative error. Residents of Maryland have been protesting every day at the courthouse as a federal judge in Maryland has been ordering the Trump administration that they really do need to go get him and return him. Senator Van Hollen says he promised Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife and his mother that he would do everything in his power as a senator to get Mr. Abrego Garcia back. Well, today, the senator went to El Salvador himself to try to get him. And Senator Chris Van Hollen joins us live from El Salvador. Next.